Imagine arriving at Morrisound Recording in Tampa, Florida during the scorching summer of 1990 with nothing but a $40,000 budget and a burning desire to redefine the limits of extreme metal. For the four young Brazilians in Sepultura, this wasn't just another recording session. It was the moment they transitioned from a third world posse into a finally owned professional machine. Following the breakthrough success of 1989's Beneath the Remains, the pressure was on to deliver a masterpiece that could stand alongside the giants of the genre. What they created was Arise, an album that not only conquered the underground, but eventually achieved platinum status worldwide and be hailed as a landmark of thrash and death metal history. In this video, we're diving deep into the story behind Arise, from the experimental recording sessions to the controversial music videos that MTV refused to air. Arise is the fourth studio album by Brazilian heavy metal band Sepultura, released on March 25, 1991 through Roadrunner Records. It's now celebrating 35 years. I know I'm a few days late with this one, but I wanted to get it done. The album represents the band's experiments with that album's death and thrash style, as well as its progressive and technical abilities, and presents the band's first incursions with industrial music, hardcore punk, and Latin percussion. Now, I have an interesting history with this band. I knew about them when the album came out, but I didn't buy the CD until many years later. I remember reading a guitar magazine about this album back in the early 90s, and that particular issue had the guitar tabs for dead embryonic cells. I actually found a picture of it online. But back then I didn't listen to the band that much until the mid-2000s. I would listen to a lot of new metal bands like Korn, System of a Down, Linkin Park. I used to order CDs from Columbia House, and back then I had this home gym in my basement, and I used to work out a lot, and I listened to CDs while I worked out. The first Sepultura album that I bought was a compilation called The Best of Sepultura, and I still have the CD right here. This was how I reconnected with heavier music, but I found the Arise CD later in Mexico City many years ago, and since then it's been one of my favorites. I think this is just a great CD, and it's an awesome album, so that's why I want to do a video on it. Again, I did one 5 years ago, and I want to tell the story, so here's the story. By the early 1990s, the thrash metal scene was changing. Legends like Metallica moving towards a more commercial sound. Sepultura, however, were young and hungry. They wanted to push everything to the limit, faster, heavier, more aggressive. They moved to Phoenix, Arizona, acquired new management, and secured a $40,000 budget from Roadrunner Records, which was a massive leap from their previous shoestring productions. This allowed them to travel to Morrisound Recording to work with the producer Scott Burns in a studio properly equipped for their aggressive style. The lineup was now iconic. Max Cavalera on rhythm guitar and vocals, his brother Igor Cavalera on drums, Andreas Kisser on lead guitar, and Paolo Jr. on bass. However, in a long-standing bit of studio trivia, it was actually Andreas Kisser who recorded the bass parts for the album, as Paolo Jr. did not perform on the record despite being credited. This was the first time the band had the luxury of time. For instance, Igor and Scott Burns spent an entire week just testing drum tunings and microphone placements to ensure the kit sounded perfect. The sound of Arise is often described as the logical conclusion of death and thrash metal blending together. While it maintained the breakneck pace of the early work, it began to incorporate groove-laden rhythms and industrial influences from bands like Ministry and Nine Inch Nails. Max Cavalera notes at the time they were trying to bridge the gap between the technicality of Metallica's And Just For All and the brutality of Morbid Angel. So to achieve the razor-sharp tone, the band used a mix of high-end gear. Max was playing a white BC Rich Warlock as his primary guitar. Andreas Kisser often used Jackson and Charvel guitars equipped with humbuckers for aggressive thrash tones. Their amplification was a combination of Mesa Boogie Mark IV and Marshall heads to get that crunchy Metallica sound. To keep the riffs tight during the high-gain chugs, they utilized noise gates like the ISP Decimator and boosted their signal with pedals like the Ibanez Tube Screamer or the Boss MT2 Metal Zone. The final mix was handled by Andy Wallace, whose work gave the album a powerful, polished clarity that set it apart from other extreme metal releases in 1991. Arise consists of 9 tracks, and the album does not have any filler. Arise is the title track and a thrash masterpiece. It opens with a creepy industrial intro. And here's some cool trivia. Sepultura frontman Max Cavalera has confirmed that he borrowed from U2's album title for a key lyric for the title track of Arise, the famous line from U2's New Year's Day and the title of the live album, Under a Blood Red Sky. Max Cavalera adapted this for the Arise chorus, singing, "Under a pale gray sky, we shall rise." Lyrically, the song is an apocalyptic look at religious and political conflict. Dead Embryonic Cells, often cited as a fan favorite, featuring a slow, menacing start that transitions into technical riff trading. Lyrics discuss a world ruined by previous generations where the future is born into a dead world. It also features an infamous mid-tempo riff that some argue laid the foundation for the entire metalcore genre, and here's a clip of that. Desperate Cries, the masterpiece of metal composition. The track features a haunting acoustic intro before launching into doom thrash. It's a torture song about facing death, and Max's vocals here are often praised at being at the absolute peak. Murder is a grim exploration of the Brazilian prison system and the history of violence against inmates. Alter State is a major milestone for Sepultura because it introduced Latin percussion and tribal drumming, a style that would later become their signature on albums like Chaos ID and Roots. Underseas, Regnum Irae is a slower, atmospheric track inspired by the controversial book, The Last Temptation of Christ. It explores the struggle between the spirit and the flesh and the burden of forced religion. Also has some cool instrumental parts, so let me play a clip of that as well. Infected Voice, the album closer's pure thrash insanity. Sounds like a rabid grizzly bear. Lyrics are actually quite pragmatic, dealing with the fear of growing up and making tough decisions. One of the most defining moments of the Arise era was the controversy surrounding the lead single's music video. Filmed in the desolate landscape of Death Valley, the video for Arise featured the band playing in heat mixed with apocalyptic religious imagery. The most striking image was a Christ-like figure wearing a gas mask while hanging on the cross. MTV America promptly banned the video, citing its blasphemous and disturbing content. Despite this, the band's popularity was unstoppable. While MTV wouldn't play Arise, they did give significant airplay to Dead Embryonic Cells on Headbangers Ball, which helped the band break into the mainstream. The tour supporting Arise was the longest and most grueling of the band's career at the time, lasting from 1991 to 1992. They played 220 shows in 39 countries. They performed for 70,000 people at Rock in Rio 2 and played at massive crowds of 100,000 in Indonesia, where the album eventually went gold, their first official industry certification. However, the tour also marked by tragedy. During a free show in Sao Paulo in May 1991, the military police expected 10,000 fans, but 30,000 showed up. The crowd became impossible to manage. 18 people were arrested, and tragically, one young fan was murdered with an axe. This led to a massive media backlash against rock music in Brazil. Yet, it didn't slow Sepultura's monumental rise. They went on to tour with legends like Ozzy Osbourne, Motorhead, and Ministry. And they were even considered rivals to Slayer in the eyes of international press. No discussion of Arise is complete without mentioning its iconic cover art, created by renowned fantasy artist Michael Whelan. The piece was one of the few he commissioned specifically for an album. It combines Lovecraftian horror with ancient relics like Stonehenge and Mayan art, using a unique sepia tone that stood out in a sea of gore-splattered death metal covers. Decades later, Arise remains a stone-cold classic, the first Sepultura album to enter the Billboard 200, and has since been inducted into the Decibel Hall of Fame. Many fans consider it the band's thrash high watermark and the bridge that allowed them to experiment with the tribal and industrial sounds that would later define 90s metal. It proved that a band from Brazil could not only hang out with the best, but could actually lead the charge in the evolution of extreme music. Arise isn't just an album. It's a testament to a band at their creative zenith, pushing their gear, their voices, and their bodies to the absolute limit. Whether it's the precision of the riffs or the raw aggression of Max's vocals, this record continues to ignite mosh pits and inspire new generations of metalheads. If you want to check out the video I made 5 years ago for the 30th anniversary, it should be appearing on your screen right now. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.